Good morning, good morning, good morning. See if you can guess what I'm celebrating. Barca are celebrating because they polished off an excellent season and a title win by going to San Mamés and winning 3-0, playing well, winning handsomely. Something they don't often do at San Mamés. But today is not about the champions. We've talked about them sufficiently for the moment. This is about Help the Aged. This is an appeal for Help the Aged. This is respect for the Dad's Army of Spain. And in a couple of cases, it's a goodbye. I'll be clearer. Luka Modric, when he signed from Tottenham Hotspur, was within 6 months voted by the online readers of Marca the worst signing of the season. People often say it was Marca. It wasn't. It was the viewers. It was the fans. It was the ones who supposedly always know better than the journalists. In that instance, no. Because here he is, from 2012 to 2015, 28 trophies, and not only a footballer and a man of class and brilliance and distinction, but somebody who's united football fans around the world. It's a tendency, I would argue, that many football fans like to see the big sides, the big clubs, the ones that win all the time, knocked over. And therefore, their players are very seldom favourites of the neutrals. Not in the case of Luka Modric. For Madridistas, a couple of years after he signed, he'd sealed. I like what I did there. Their love forever, because in the 93rd minute in Lisbon, losing the Champions League final to Atletico Madrid, it was the Croat, a goat herder, somebody who learned to play in the parking area of a hotel, who came through war, whose grandfather was killed by the opposite side in the Balkans War. This same kid had looked up, pinged a corner straight onto the head of the onrushing Sergio Ramos, and suddenly a Champions League final which was lost to Atleti, imagine the vergüenza, was in the balance again, and in extra time it was won, and won very easily. What he got, Luka Modric, was a goodbye fit for a king, a goodbye that Raúl didn't get, a goodbye that Iker Casillas didn't get, a goodbye that Sergio Ramos didn't get. At Real Madrid, they tend to treat the legends really well, but at the end, often there's a falling out, and often the goodbye lacks the flourish and the beauty that the person merits. Not in the case of Modric, who stood out on the pitch and gave a lovely discourse. He'd come off in the 87th minute to a monstrous acclaim. And he used this phrase, "Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened," which moved many people and started Florentino Perez's chin wobbling. Ancelotti came out and said some fantastic things, the things he would never forget about being at Real Madrid, about the Bernabeu. And Florentino went. He wasn't quite as tearful as I was in Lisbon at halftime of the Women's Champions League final when I found out that Aberdeen won the penalty shootout, because that was Niagara Falls. It was like that Gaza Crisp advert where he's got tear ducts artificially implanted and he's weeping and crying like in Turin that night in the 1990 World Cup semi-final. However, if Florentino and I shared tears over the weekend, it's about the first time the two of us have shared anything. There's something that I like still better. Modric became acknowledged as a truly all-time exceptional footballer for his ability to continuously do the right thing. And I would argue it didn't matter whether that was a brilliant, beautiful, inventive thing or just the simple, correct thing to do in a given situation, defensive, organising or creative. That's a rare knack. And his goodbye coincides with Ancelotti leaving and Xabi Alonso coming in. Now, I'm not saying that Xabi Alonso was brutal, nasty, ruthless and said get him out. But Modric wanted to stay for one more season. He's 40 in September, but he's shown that there was a case for him to stay, a case for him to help his old midfield teammate bridge the eras, whether it be wholly on the pitch, in the training ground, in the dressing room. But Alonso and Florentino Perez and José Angel Sanchez, the vice president, said no. Here's the moment. And here's the reason. There's a rebuild needed. Modric will be, on the 9th of September, 40 years old, and his salary is gigantic. When you take the salary and the tax that Real Madrid pay on it, by saying goodbye, they're helping their financial fair play by something in the region of 45, 46 million euros. At this stage, although it's sad to see Modric go, that's the right option. That's what Modric would have done. We'll miss him, I'll miss him. Ancelotti is class. We'll come back to him. He's going to coach Brazil. I fear he's making a mistake. Nonetheless, I will feel his absence for his intelligence, his willingness to talk about football, his wit, his class, the fun you get in watching the circus around him and how he whips them into shape. I'll miss Modric too, a class act. The dad's army that's staying with us is Iago Aspas. Aspas is a twinkle in football's eye at only 37, although 38 coming up in August. He's now celebrating 10 years back at Celta Vigo. He's their captain, he's their spiritual leader, he's their greatest ever footballer. He was born very, very close to Vigo. It's been his club all his life. And during the 10 years he's been back since failed experiments at both Sevilla and Liverpool, he's largely been fighting a rearguard action, as dad's armies do, in order to keep Celta up in the division. This season was signed off where he's been used far less than ever before at Celta by a manager who's younger than him, and in a culture where the president and the sports director, Mariano Marino is the president, and the Mexican director of football are unified in saying, we attack all the time, we play to win all the time, we never go percentage results, flat out football. It would have been perfect for the Aspas aged 25, 26, 30, 31, 32, but less so aged 37. But how does he sign off with a flourish? What was the Zorro sword stroke from Iago Aspas? They go away to Getafe, like a visit to a bad dentist. Celta have been awful on the road for 2/3 of this season, genuinely awful. But they go there, they go one down. Aspas sets up the Panda Borja Iglesias for 1-1 and then scores the winner on the half volley to take Celta back into Europe for the first time in 8 years. The truth is, dream and dream big, people. Ancelotti has shown that in his way, although he's regal. He comes from the high table. Modric, the guy who suffered during war, who lost family members, whose upbringing was scarred by the horrors of mankind, dreamed and dreamed big, and when the chance came to leave Spurs for Real Madrid, he fought his way out of a club that he liked and enjoyed, and look where he's finished. Aspas the dreamer dreamed of making their small seaside town, which largely people want to push aside or forget or not pay proper respect to. He stamped his foot on the ball and his fist on the table sufficiently that Celta have become gradually a force. He kept them up. The new president has brought money, brought academy signings through, a young coach, and Celta are in Europe. Chapeau. Goodbye to a 60-something Italian. Goodbye to a nearly 40-year-old Croat, and thank the Lord for a 37-year-old Galician. They dared to dream, and so did. Follow me now and see what you can see of the link. So did Napoli, so did Bologna, so did Nottingham Forest, so did Newcastle, so did Crystal Palace, and so did the mighty Dandies. Either qualifying for Europe in the first time in an eon, winning the title against the odds, or winning their national cup as underdogs. God bless the Dandies, up the mighty. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that they're the only club in Scotland with 2 European stars. And thank you to all my Celtic friends who were unbelievably generous and gracious in sending me congratulatory messages on Saturday night afternoon. Up the Dandies, dare to dream, stay tuned.